She seemed to have everything: a good job, friends, a life anyone would envy. But inside, Madison felt tired, suffocated, as if she carried an invisible weight every day. Have you ever felt that? That feeling of living to please others while your own voice gets lost in the silence? Madison smiled in photos, but cried when no one saw. And every time she tried to be perfect, the armor grew heavier. On the outside, everything looked bright. But inside, there were cracks no one could see. Madison woke up every day with questions she didn't have the courage to ask out loud. Who am I, really? What's the point of all this I do? Maybe you felt that too, that silent anguish, as if playing a role you didn't choose, wearing masks for so long you no longer remember your own face. And the more she tried to fit in, the further she drifted from herself. Her life was a race with no finish line. Meetings, appointments, forced smiles. But at night, when the lights went out, came the emptiness, a silence that screamed, begging for answers. Madison didn't know it yet, but she was about to start the most important journey of her life, a journey to shed her armor, find her essence, and discover that true greatness isn't in pleasing, but in serving with love. Welcome to Good Stories Today, your channel for exciting stories. Listen while driving, working, or simply looking for inspiration. Subscribe to the channel and enable notifications so you don't miss the next videos. Now tell me, have you ever wondered who you would be if you could take off all the masks? If you could live your essence without fear? That's Madison's journey, and maybe yours too. Shall we begin? Chapter 1: The Silence. Behind the Smile. Madison. Blake was sitting at the coffee table, staring at her cup as if she could find answers at the bottom. Her phone vibrated nonstop. Work messages, social media notifications, meeting reminders. Everything seemed urgent, but nothing seemed important. She took a deep breath, trying to ignore the itching on her arms. The red spots were there again, like a silent warning that something wasn't right. On the outside, Madison was the picture of success. At 30, she had a respected position at a tech company, a modern apartment in Austin, and friends who admired her. But inside, she felt exhausted. Every smile was a performance, every conversation an attempt to please. It was as if she lived inside an invisible suit of armor, so heavy she no longer remembered what it was like to live without it. As she was getting ready to leave, she looked in the mirror and wondered, who am I, really? The question came as a whisper, but it echoed like a scream inside her. Madison didn't have an answer. It had been so long since she had played roles: the perfect professional, the always available friend, the exemplary daughter, that her own voice seemed to have disappeared. And deep down, she feared that if she took off the masks, no one would recognize her. Perhaps not even herself. This armor didn't appear out of nowhere. It was forged in childhood, in a home where love came with conditions. Linda, her mother, was admired by everyone, elegant, charismatic, always with a flawless smile. But behind the appearance, there were demands that Madison learned early to meet. Be a good girl, Madison. Don't disappoint me, she said with a sweet tone that hid an order. And so, the girl learned that pleasing was the only way to be accepted. Madison grew up collecting compliments for good grades, impeccable clothes, and exemplary behavior. But every mistake was punished with icy silence or sharp criticism. Little by little, she wore masks to survive. The mask of the perfect daughter, the obedient girl, the girl who never complains. Masks that became so much a part of her that, at age 30, she no longer knew who she was without them. And the more she tried to please, the further she drifted from herself. The vulnerability of an unprotected childhood also attracted shadows. At 17, Madison met someone who seemed kind, almost a refuge. But behind the sweet words was a toxic, controlling man who took advantage of her need to please. She suppressed herself to keep the peace, repeating the pattern she learned at home. Each time she yielded, the armor grew heavier, and each time she stayed silent, her voice was lost a little more. Now, at 30, Madison carried not only emotional wounds, but also physical ones. Allergies were just a symptom of something bigger, a suffocated soul crying out for air. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to begin the most important journey of her life, a journey to shed her armor, find her essence, and discover that true greatness isn't in pleasing, but in serving with love. That morning, as she closed the apartment door, she felt a strange restlessness. Something inside her told her she couldn't keep living like this. But, as always, she ignored it. She picked up her phone, opened her favorite playlist, and left in a hurry. It was easier to get distracted than to listen to the silence. Little did she know that, in a few days, that silence would become her greatest teacher. Chapter 2. When the body screams and the soul remembers. Madison was in the meeting room, surrounded by hurried voices and colorful charts. She tried to concentrate, but the itching on her arms was unbearable. The red spots had spread, and she felt her heart racing. Take a deep breath, she thought, trying to hide it. But suddenly, everything blurred. The sound of voices faded into a distant hum, and before she could call for help, her body gave in. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on a stretcher, with white lights above and a strong smell of disinfectant. A nurse smiled, trying to reassure her. "You fainted, darling. Everything's fine now." Madison tried to smile, but then the tears came without warning. It wasn't just tiredness. It was something bigger. Something she had been ignoring for years. And at that moment, she realized she couldn't keep living like this. While waiting for the doctor, flashes began to invade her mind. She remembered her childhood, the immaculate living room of the house where she grew up, and the sweet voice that always came with demands. "Madison, don't disappoint me," Linda, her mother, would say, with a smile that felt like a sentence. Madison learned early that love came with conditions. If she was perfect, she would be accepted. If she was wrong, she would be ignored. She remembered afternoons when she wanted to play in the yard, but sat with her hands crossed so as not to wrinkle her dress. "Well-mannered girls don't get dirty," Linda would say while showing off her daughter as a trophy to her friends. Every compliment she received was like a coin of approval. Every criticism, an invisible wound. And so, Madison molded her life to fit her mother's expectations, and later, the expectations of the world. At age 10, she already knew how to smile even when she was sad. At 15, she already knew how to stay quiet when she wanted to scream. And at 17, when she met that man who seemed kind, she was already used to suppressing herself to keep the peace. He said he loved her, but controlled her every move. Madison confused control with care, because that's how she learned to love, by pleasing, yielding, disappearing. Every time she did that, the armor grew heavier. The doctor came in with a serious expression. "Madison, your tests show signs of extreme stress. Your body is reacting. If you don't slow down, this could become something serious." She heard the words, but they seemed distant. Stress? Was that what they called living? Madison left the hospital with a sick leave certificate and a clear recommendation. Rest. But how can you rest when your mind is a storm? That night, alone in the apartment, Madison looked at the white walls and felt an overwhelming emptiness. She picked up her phone, opened social media, and saw photos of people smiling, traveling, living. Everything seemed so easy for others. "Why can't I be happy?" she thought as tears fell. It was as if she were trapped in an invisible prison, and the key had been lost long ago. In the following days, she tried to follow the doctor's recommendations. Sleep more. Avoid stress. but the silence was unbearable. Without the rush of work came the questions she had always avoided. Who am I? Why do I do all this? What's the point? Questions that hurt more than any allergy. Madison realized it wasn't just her body that was sick. It was her soul. Then something unexpected happened. In the midst of loneliness, Madison found a forgotten book on the shelf, a gift from a colleague she never had time to read. The title caught her attention. When Silence Speaks. She opened the first page without expectation, but the words seemed to speak directly to her. Sometimes, you need to stop and listen to the voice you've been ignoring your whole life. Madison closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Maybe it was time to listen. Chapter 3. The Invisible Chains. Madison was sitting on the couch, hugging a pillow, while the rain beat against the window. The silence of the apartment seemed to scream, bringing back memories she had tried to bury for years. She remembered her teenage years when she wanted to do theater at school. "That's a waste of time," said Linda, her mother, without even looking at her. "You need to focus on your studies." "Do you want to embarrass me?" Madison swallowed her tears and gave up on her dream. It was easier to obey than to face her mother's cold stare. Years later, at 17, she met Ryan. He seemed perfect, kind, attentive, always saying he wanted to take care of her. Madison believed she had finally found someone who loved her without conditions. But soon came the criticism disguised as concern. "Why do you talk to that colleague? He's not a good influence. That outfit doesn't look good on you." Madison gave in, smiled, and said, "Okay." Each concession was an invisible chain that held her captive even more. That pattern repeated everywhere. At work, Madison was the exemplary employee, always saying yes to everything. When her boss asked her to take on an extra project, even exhausted, she accepted. "You're amazing, Madison," he said, and she smiled, even knowing she would spend sleepless nights. Each compliment was like a dose of anesthesia for the pain she carried. But when she was alone, the feeling was always the same: emptiness. Chapter 4. The First Step Toward Freedom. Madison was sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by scattered papers and a cup of cold coffee. She was trying to organize her thoughts, but everything seemed chaotic. The collapse at work still echoed like a warning, but she didn't know where to begin. She picked up her phone and, after staring at the screen for minutes, called Sarah. "Hi, do you have time to talk?" Her voice came out trembling, almost a cry for help. On the other end, silence for a few seconds, then a welcoming tone. "Of course, Maddie, I'm here for you." When Sarah arrived, Madison broke down. "I don't know who I am, Sarah. I've spent my life trying to please everyone, and I lost myself." Tears fell uncontrollably. Sarah held her hand firmly. "You don't have to carry that alone. You know, I've been in that place before. That feeling of living to please everyone but yourself." Madison looked at her, surprised. "You?" Sarah nodded. "Yes, and you know what changed my life? Understanding that I wasn't created to be perfect. I was created to have a purpose." Madison took a deep breath, trying to absorb those words. "Purpose. I don't even know who I am. How will I know what I can offer?" Sarah smiled. "That's why you need to reconnect. When you connect with God, everything starts to make sense. It's like a tree. The deeper the roots, the more the branches expand. You're trying to grow without roots, Maddie. That's why you're falling." Madison fell silent. That metaphor hit her like lightning. Chapter 5. Roots for Flourishing. Madison arrived at the bookstore with hesitant steps, like someone entering unknown territory. The space was welcoming, with soft lighting, shelves full of books, and the aroma of fresh coffee in the air. People were sitting in a circle, some smiling, others with tired eyes like hers. In the center, a man with a serene expression, named Michael, began to speak. All of us wear armor. Today, we're going to learn how to let it fall. Madison felt a shiver. Armor. He was talking about her. Michael continued in a firm but gentle voice. Life is not a race. It's a garden, and gardens need roots. Without roots, there are no fruits. He pointed to a plant on the table. Do you see this tree? It grows because its roots are deep. You've been living like a branch loose in the wind, Madison. She swallowed hard. How did he know? That metaphor remained etched in her mind like a silent call. For the first time, someone seemed to see beyond the smile she used as a shield. The first exercise was simple but powerful, writing down on paper everything that was preventing her from living her essence. Madison held the pen with trembling hands and wrote words that hurt. Fear, guilt, shame, pleasing. Each letter seemed to weigh tons. When she put the paper in a box in the center of the circle, it felt like handing over a piece of armor. Michael looked at everyone and said, "These words do not define who you are. You are not what others expect. You are what God dreamed of." Chapter 6. Trials, Allies, and Enemies. Madison returned home after the meeting at the bookstore with a strange sensation. Hope mixed with fear. For some days, she tried maintaining a routine of silence and prayer, but soon the first storms arrived. The next morning, her mother called. "Madison, you need to stop with this nonsense. A business built on purpose doesn't pay the bills." Linda's voice was like a hammer, shattering any peace Madison had managed to achieve. "Mom, I just need some time." Linda sighed impatiently. "Time? You're becoming irresponsible." Madison hung up with tears in her eyes. The armor seemed to want to return. At work, things weren't better. Her boss called her for a meeting. "Madison, we need you on this project. You are the best." She felt the old urge to say yes, but something inside her screamed, "No." For a few seconds, she remained silent, her heart racing. "I can't take that on right now." The boss frowned. "Is everything okay with you?" Madison smiled, trying to hide her surprise. "Yes, I just need to take care of my health." She left the room trembling. To say no seemed like a victory, but also a risk. And deep down, she was afraid of losing everything. That night, Madison called Sarah. "I don't know if I can. My mother thinks I'm crazy. My boss is going to fire me." Sarah listened calmly. "Maddie, changes are scary, but you cannot return to prison just because it's comfortable." Madison cried. "I'm scared." Sarah replied with conviction. "Fear is normal, but courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it." That phrase stuck, echoing. Courage. Something Madison never needed more than now. Chapter 7. The Great Ordeal. Madison was alone in the apartment, surrounded by silence and shadows. The rain was beating down hard on the window, as if the sky cried with her. She felt broken, like a vase that had fallen to the floor and shattered into 1,000 pieces. She picked up her cell phone and saw dozens of messages from work, from her mom, demands disguised as concern. She threw the device on the sofa and shouted, "I can't take it anymore!" The voice echoed off the walls, but no one replied. It was just her and the void. The allergies were worse, her arms red, burning like fire. Madison looked at herself and thought, "My body is screaming because my soul is suffocating." She fell to her knees on the floor, crying like never before. Each tear seemed to carry years of pain, of silence, of masks. "Why can't I be happy?" she whispered. It was as if she was sinking into a dark sea, not knowing if there was a surface. She picked up the book, The Invisible Journey, and leafed through it with trembling hands. A phrase jumped out. "Sometimes you have to break to learn how to bloom." Madison closed her eyes and let the tears fall. "I'm broken," she thought. "Can I bloom?" At that moment, she remembered Michael's words. After the storm, the soil becomes fertile, but all she saw was destruction. The phone rang. It was Sarah. Madison answered with a weak voice. "I don't know if I can," Sarah replied firmly. "Maddie, you are not alone. God is with you, but you need to ask for help." Madison cried even more. "I don't know how," Sarah said gently. "Start by talking to him. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be real." Madison closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Maybe it was time. She turned off the lights, knelt on the floor, and began to speak, between sobs. "God, I don't know who I am without this armor, but I want to find out. Help me. I don't want to live like this." The silence took over the room, but it wasn't empty. It was a silence full of presence. Madison felt something different, as if a soft light were seeping through the cracks in her soul. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. Chapter 8. The Lightness of Being Who You Are. Madison woke up that morning with a different feeling. The sun streamed in through the window, illuminating the room with a soft light, as if it were a sign. She stood up slowly, looked at her arms, and noticed something surprising. The spots were almost fading. She touched the skin carefully and smiled. It wasn't just a physical improvement. It was proof that something inside her was changing. Healing began in the soul. She picked up the diary and wrote, "Today, I want to live my essence." Then she said a simple prayer. "Thank you, God, for not giving up on me." She felt a peace so profound that tears came without effort. It was as if she was being embraced by something greater, something that always was there, but she had never stopped to feel it. For the first time, Madison believed that she didn't need to be perfect to be loved. In the following days, she began to take small steps. She called Sarah and said, "I want to help with something, anything." Sarah smiled on the other end of the line. "There's a community center in need of volunteers. Want to come with me?" Madison hesitated for a second, but then answered, "Yes." It was the first time she had said yes to something that wasn't about pleasing or proving worth, but about serving. Chapter 9. The Elixir of Peace and Purpose. Madison returned to the office after weeks away. The same building, the same people, but everything seemed different. Not because the world had changed, but because she had. She walked down the hallways with firm steps, without the armor she carried for years. When the boss asked her to take on an urgent project, Madison took a deep breath and said calmly, "I can help, but within my limits." The boss frowned, surprised. Madison smiled. For the first time, she didn't feel guilty for respecting herself. At night, her mother called. "Madison, I heard you're working less. That's dangerous." Previously, that phrase would have been like a chain tightening around her neck. But now, Madison replied with serenity, "Mom, I'm okay. I'm taking care of myself and helping others. That's success for me." On the other end, silence. Linda didn't know what to say. Perhaps it was the first time she had heard her daughter speak with such firmness and such peace. In the following days, Madison began to share her story with colleagues. In a conversation at a cafe, an employee said, "You look different. What's the secret?" Madison smiled. "It's not a secret. It's purpose. When you discover who you are and who you live for, everything changes." Her colleague became thoughtful. Madison realized she was doing what she always dreamed, to inspire, not with grand speeches, but with authenticity. Conclusion. What is your armor? Madison started this story as someone suffocated by expectations, living behind an invisible armor. Maybe you have seen yourself in it at some point. How many times do we smile at the world while crying inside? How many times do we carry weights that aren't ours, trying to please everyone but ourselves? Madison's journey shows us something powerful. True freedom isn't about pleasing others, but about living the essence that God placed within us. And that starts with a simple step: the courage to look inside, the courage to face the silence, to take off the masks, to say, I want to bloom. Now I ask you, what is your armor? Is it the fear of disappointing? The need for approval? The pursuit of perfection? Think about it. Because while you are stuck with these invisible chains, you will never feel the lightness of being who you truly are. Madison discovered that purpose isn't about status or recognition. It's about serving. It's about using the gifts God has given us to bless other lives. And when we do, something incredible happens. Happiness stops being a race and becomes a garden. A garden that blooms when the roots are standing firm. Don't wait for the storm to begin. Don't wait for the collapse to listen to the voice you've been ignoring. Start now. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath and ask, who would I be without this armor? The answer could change your life. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because exciting stories like this are not just for listening, they are for transforming. And if you want to continue this journey with us, we have many more reflective stories. Stories to listen to while driving, working, or simply seeking inspiration. Good Stories Today, your channel for exciting stories. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and leave your like so you don't miss the next videos. Each story is a unique seed, and you can help spread this garden. Now I'll leave you with one last question. Are you ready to take off your armor and bloom? If so, now is your time. Let's embark on this journey together.